Is his running right now?
It's loading.
Okay. Just for the sake of argument, I'm going to close this, and even though you've already heard me say this, I just started the recording, so I'm going to do a checkout again, just so people who don't see this can see how to check, who aren't here can see how to check this out. So you're going to hear me talking to myself here for a second. So open up Xcode, go to source control, go to checkout. The link is github.com/mlitman/sch dice roller. Click next. Decide where you want to download it. I'm going to put it in my downloads. Click download. I'll replace it because I already had one there. And it'll go ahead and open the project up. And now you'll be working with the exact same copy I am. All right. We're caught up now.
And Mike, I just want to say one thing, guys. If something's confusing, just tell us to stop. Tell Mike to stop or something like that. This way we can, because if you fall behind, then it's harder to get caught up. Okay? So if you have any questions or anything trips up, just say stop. We'll figure out what the error is. Okay? All right, Mike. Hang on 1 second. Something.
So just like when I put the second thing, I'm supposed to say that afterwards. So I have
So when so piggyback. We're not going to be able to get simulator.
so when I'm on the first book, it's like supposed to change the set.
Yeah. Wait, when yeah, speed can tell me about.
Alright, so when I go to the second page,
Yep.
I'm supposed to see I told you so, but instead it just says loop. And I'm not sure, I wrote down some stuff for it last class, but I forget how to
Okay. Well, so
Stop. Yeah.
so the question is, do you want to debug yours, or do you want to just pull down my current copy and see where we're currently at?
Yeah, if you could just pull out a copy.
But you guys use GitHub?
Yeah.
Well, no, I guess what I would suggest, I mean, I can debug it if you want me to. Otherwise, you can just download the current version just like the other guy did, so you have a working copy.
Alright, let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the problem is I don't think he has a GitHub account. So I guess he can manually type in the URL though, right?
Yeah, he doesn't have to have a GitHub account in order to check it out. He just has to use my GitHub account. So you'll go here to source control. There, let me.
Project now. Close the simulator now. You have that clear open. You're going to just go up to source control, check it out, and then we'll see the. Go look at that link. That works, right?
Yeah, but it's easy.
It's not telling me ready.
Alright. I'm good.
You're good? Okay, so 1 second here. All right. All right, so let's just review what we did last time. So one of the things that we were doing last time is learning how to send information from one screen to the other screen. So we did this a couple of different ways. Let me just see here. Okay, so I showed you 2 different ways of doing it. So let's look at those 2 ways. So first of all, we're here on the first page. We want to be able to put something in this text box. and ultimately get to that second screen. That's our ultimate goal, is to send that piece of information. Now, there's two different ways we can load this screen, and let me just double check here real quick. I want to review what I showed you already and what I didn't. Okay, good. I see where we're at. So actually, I only showed you one way so far. All right, so here's our second screen. So let's just review this real quick. So we have two screens in our application. This first screen is governed by this code behind called viewcontroller.swift. So that's the guy that actually is his logic, and we can prove that by clicking on this, the pink one here, going up here to on the upper right-hand corner, clicking on the dude to the left of the shield, show the identity inspector, and you should see the class is called viewcontroller. All right, so that word viewcontroller maps to this code behind called viewcontroller. As opposed to the green screen here, the second one, if we click on his identity inspector, we see that the class behind him is page2vc. And that's this code behind. All right, so again, that's our example of MVC, Model View Controller, where we have our implementation, so the logic side of our interface lives in these Swift files, and then the visual side of our interface lives here on the storyboard where we design it. And we connect those two things together. So right now, just as a reminder, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just make sure I didn't name that guy. I don't think I did. Good. So just as a reminder, the current way we're getting to that second screen, I deleted the segue, is we go to this button on the first screen, go to page 2, and I hit, so the first thing I did is I deleted it, so just watch what I'm doing here. It's just to remind you how we got that connection. I held the control key and just drug to this second screen. And this is going to create an action segue. All right, so this is the quick and dirty way of getting to a second screen or another screen inside of an iPhone application, but that comes with a side effect. And that side effect is as I am moving from this screen to this screen, I need to have some way of interjecting some information into that second screen. All right, so let's look at what happens on page 2 by default. Okay, so page 2 has a label that has some text in it. And that text is set equal to the text. That's this thing called woot right here. So more than likely, I'm going to end up showing you what thing you missed last time here in a second. All right, so if I don't do anything special, that page 2 is going to show the current text that's inside of this variable called the text, which was defined up here. And we hard-coded that to be woot. All right, so if we don't do anything special, when page 2 shows up, it'll say woot. And let me prove that to you real quick. So we're going to go to that view controller. And more than likely, what you were missing is this line right here, the line I just commented out. All right, so for right now, I'm going to choose not to do anything inside of this prepare for segue. We'll remind ourselves what that was for here in a second. So as of right now, what happens is when we click this button, go to page 2, it takes us to page 2 VC, and we have not interjected anything in this transmission. So as we go from page 1 to page 2 is going to load, which is going to call his viewDidLoad function, this guy right here. That's the first thing that gets called in page 2. And he's going to go ahead and set his text labels text equal to whatever string currently lives inside of our variable the text. And that string by default is woot. All right, so if I go ahead and run this, I should see woot on that second screen, which is what you were seeing before. You guys right now, if you grabbed my code, you should see something, you should see I told you so. All right, but right now mine says woot, which is the condition yours was in. All right, so we wanted to prove that we can send information from screen number 1 to screen number 2. And the way we do that is by using this variable called the text. All right, so screen number 2 has a piece of information that he's remembering. And he's called that variable the text. We hard-coded it to a value, but we're going to change that value right before we actually transition to that screen. So back here in View Controller, which is our code behind for our first screen, we see we have a function down here in the bottom called prepare for segue. right? This is our opportunity. This guy gets called automatically as a result of this segue we created. When we did the control click from go to page 2 over to here, this guy lets us know that we're using Apple's automated segue mechanism to go from one screen to another, and that implies that this function, if we wrote it, so if we chose to override the prepare for segue function and write our own version of it, our function will get called before we arrive at that second screen. All right, so what we did here is we went ahead and we created a variable. I called it VC, and we set this equal to whatever our destination view controller is. Now, in this case, we only actually have one segue. We only connected to one additional screen. So we know that every single time this guy currently gets called, the destination view controller will always be a page 2. Okay, a page 2 VC. So we'll go ahead and give ourselves a variable so we can access that page 2 VC. And then we're going to use that variable to change that page 2's the text variable to something else. So I have it say I told you so right now.
It's right, you must have been missing that step.
Yeah, this was the line that I think you were probably missing in your previous code. So the reason it would have still said woot is because you never told it to say something else. All right.
Set a variable or something and you change it. So,
now, just as an example, because this is actually an important point that we did cover last time, but I'm going to recover it right now just so we can drive that point home. I'm going to do, well, let me do this right the first way. Okay, so we'll run it here in a second. This is the version of the code that you guys just downloaded from me. Right, so we are arbitrarily setting this variable called the text equal to I told you so, and then we stepped out of the equation. That's all we're doing. Okay, when we interject, when prepare for segue gets called, we'll go ahead and give ourselves access to that destination view controller, and we'll just set his variable called the text equal to something else. Okay, then we've stepped aside. That second view controller continues to load. His view did load will get called. And what does he do? He sets his label's text equal to whatever the current value of the text is. It used to be woot, but we modified it before we got here to I told you so. All right, so if we run this, we'll see the fruits of our labor there where we see the modified version. So when I click on go to page 2, we see I told you so here. All right. Now, the important thing to show here, the problem that a lot of folks run into, and it gives you a very weird error that's sometimes difficult to debug. So this is very important. What we're about to cover. I'm going to try to set that text differently. All right. So I'm going to go back over here to page 2, and I'm just going to comment out this line that says self.thelabel.text equals to the text. So I think by default that label just says label on it, like this. All right, so
you comment that line out, like.
Yep. What I did is I went right here to line 19. I put a comment in front of it. So I just did 2 front slashes. So we just took that out of play. So we're no longer overwriting our label's text with the value of the text. Our label will just have whatever text is naturally in there. All right, that's in page 2.
Yep.
And then in our original view controller, we're also not going to even try to change the text to start with, okay? So we're not doing anything special as we transition, and we're not doing anything special upon transition. We're just going to have it say its natural value, and the storyboard says that this label by default just says label on it. All right, so let's just prove that that's the case. We'll go ahead and run it. And right now, that second page should just have our default label that says label. All right, so now we're going to do what logically might make sense, but what actually breaks the code. And we're going to explain again why it breaks the code. All right, so again, our goal here is we want to change the value of this label. So we're going to go back into our view controller, so page 1. We'll go ahead and grab our destination view controller again like we did before. Okay. But this time, instead of setting that text variable, Okay? Like we did, we're no longer using that text variable to set the label. Instead, we're going to try to logically say, I would like to set the label on that second screen. I want to set that label's text to something else. So I'm going to say vc.thelabel.text is equal, I am trying to set the label. All right. So rather than talk to that label through a variable, I'm trying to talk to that label directly here. So I'm grabbing my destination view controller, and I'm trying to set the label variable dot text equal to I am trying to set the label. Now let's go remind ourselves what kind of animal this is. All right, so the label variable, if we go into page 2, we see that this guy is an IB outlet, that's an interface builder outlet, called the label of type UI label. All right, so when we look at this code we just wrote, we would expect that our destination view controller's label text will now be equal to this. Seems to make pretty good sense. But when we run this, the program's actually going to crash. Okay, we'll go ahead and run this. We'll go to page 2. Program crashes. Now, why does it crash? It crashes because this guy right here, the label, does not exist yet. That guy, because over here in our page 2, because he's an interface builder outlet, that is our way of linking our page 2 code to something on the page 2 interface, which is this label right here. All right, that's this guy right up here. We had made an IB outlet. Right. So since we are calling inside of our view controller, since we're calling this code prior to view did load in page 2, all those labels and widgets and stuff on that second screen do not exist yet. They have not finished being born. So we don't have access to something that doesn't exist. That's why we were using our variable called the text to get that information over to that second screen. Because we can't talk to the label directly because it does not exist yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So we went ahead and we commented out. So I'll uncomment that now. So now our page 2 will set his label's text equal to whatever's currently in our variable called the text. Because at this point in time, since we're inside of viewDidLoad, self.thelabel.text exists. That guy's a real thing now. He's been born. And we can set his text. Which then means back here in view controller, we have to set the text value. So we're talking to just the string variable from that second screen in order to put this text across. So we're going to set that string variable, then we're going to let the second page finish loading. Inside of his view did load, he'll set his label's text equal to whatever's in that variable. Now we'll see that work. So this is back to where we started, but hopefully that gives you some information about how this works. All right, so let's let this finish launching here. All right, so sorry. So now when I click on go to page 2, it shows me I'm trying to set the label. All right, proving we got that information over there.
Can you click on your view controller for a second?
In the simulator or the actual?
In the actual, yeah.
The stuff right here?
Yeah, so that should be, you see that. You guys have that? View controller? Yeah.
Okay, so a very important thing that we just discussed, and I can't emphasize this enough, is we're learning about when those widgets on our screen, on our interface, are actually available to us. Screen 2, page 2's text label is not available to us here on View Controller. It becomes available to us from view did load on in page 2. That's when we actually have physical access to the actual label. Before that point in time, it's just a promise. It hasn't actually been connected yet. And that's going to save you hours of debugging at some point of time in your life. Because you're going to wonder, why the heck does this thing keep crashing? And it's because it hasn't been born yet. Okay, so far so good. That makes some sense?
Yeah. Simulators are good. Yeah, yep.
Okay, so that's way number 1 to get stuff, to send stuff to our second screen. All right. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to now make this a little bit more complete by reading in information from that text field inside of our first view controller. So if I come back here, I want to be able to type in a 5 here, click on go to page 2. We're going to read in that 5, send it to page 2, and have it show up in his label. So that this guy will say 5 instead of some hard-coded string. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so the way we're going to do that is just like we did before. We're going to have to give ourselves programmatic access to this text field. And we do that with an iboutlet. Just like we have programmatic access to this label on the second screen, so we can set the text, we need to give ourselves programmatic access to our text field on the first screen so we can get this text. So we're going to go back out to our storyboard. We're going to click on our first view controller. Just make sure this guy's yellow circle's highlighted. And then we're going to click on the 2 little circles up here called the assistant editor, which should slide that in. So the same mechanic. We use this exact same mechanic whether we're hooking up outlets or whether we're hooking up actions. All right.
Yes.
And the reason why I select the view controller first always is so Xcode has the best chance of making sure it selects the correct code behind.
Hang on 1 second, Mike. Yeah. Very good. All right, we're good, Mike.
Okay. All right. So this little mechanic that we're doing here, let me just actually do it again, because again, this is another really important thing. So something I want you to build on here is every single problem that you're ever going to solve, whether it's with JavaScript or whether it's iPhone programming or just in real life, you always have to solve in terms of the tools that you have available to you. And right now, you have a very limited set of tools that you understand in the iPhone programming world. All right, so we have to solve all of our stuff in terms of those tools. And right now, we have 2 very important tools. We have something called, well, the first one is an iboutlet. So that iboutlet is our way of connecting to these widgets on the screen from our code behind. So we always connect those guys up by first clicking on the view controller in which the widget lives, then clicking on the 2 circles. That should slide in the code associated with that. Make sure that the right code was picked. This is our view controller, which is the code behind for this guy, so it picked the right thing. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click once on our text field just to make sure I have the right guy selected.
Now, hey Mike,
yep.
What happens if the page 2 VC shows up instead of the view controller on the right side?
Okay, well you can either redo it or you can come up. So notice how up here it says automatic.
Where's that again?
I'm clicking where it says automatic right now.
Yeah.
So if it picks the wrong thing, you could go in and just click on automatic, switch over to manual, and go and select the right view controller.
Yeah.
Okay. But realistically, what you should probably do is go back out, make sure you click the right view controller again, click the 2 circles again, and get used to that mechanic of the 1-2 punch. Click view controller, click the 2 circles, it brings up the right thing automatically.
Mine was on manual. That's why I
Okay. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to click on this text field just once, just to highlight it, prove that we have the right guy selected. Now we're going to click and hold, or press and hold the control key, and then click and drag from that text field over into our code. And you'll see a little pop-up comes up that says insert outlet action or outlet collection. So we'll let go of there. I'm going to do this above view did load, but inside of the opening curly brace for our view controller, just like we did on that page 2 for the label. And notice the connection type starts off as an outlet by default. That's correct. That's what we want to do. Outlets are our way of programmatically linking variables in code to widgets on the screen. All right.
Hang on 1 second, Mike. Actually, make sure you have it side. Yeah, click up here. Whenever you're working on that, you want to make sure you first click that so you don't All right, Mike.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and name this guy. We'll call it the text field. You can name it whatever you want, but I'm going to call it the text field. And notice it auto-discovered the type is a UI text field. So we're not going to touch that. And then we're just going to click connect. And this will insert some text into our code. It's going to be an iboutlet called the text field of type UI text field. So now we have programmatic access to that text field within our view controller Swift file. All right, so we'll go ahead and close the code. So we're back to our normal storyboard here. So we've done everything we need to do now in order to give us the capability of grabbing information from that text field. So the last thing we'll do is we'll go into our view controller, go all the way down to the bottom, and where we're setting vc.theText equal to this hard-coded string, we're instead going to set it equal to whatever value currently lives in our text field. So we'll say vc.theText is equal to self.thetextfield.text.
Everybody got that? So you go back, controlling. And down bottom before is that I told you so? Yeah, I got that. Turns the arrow, right? Yeah. Okay, well.
Okay, so first of all, we see this errors here. And the reason we have this error is because the text property of a text field potentially this guy's what's known as an optional. It does not have to give us a string. Okay, it does not have to give us a string. Now, in our case right now, just to keep this simple, we happen to know that it is going to give us a string because we are going to type something into that box. Therefore, we could go ahead and just put an exclamation point here. Similarly, if you click on the error here, it'll give you options for how to fix it. But I'm just going to put that exclamation point there. And now you see that your error should go away. If it hasn't gone away yet, it'll go away here in a second if you click away from that. All right, so what we're saying here, by putting the exclamation point in, we're saying, I understand that this guy is optional and might not give me a string, but I know for a fact that I will be putting something into that box, so just trust me. I read the exclamation point as trust me, I know what I'm doing. All right? The alternative is to put a question mark there. Okay, and if we put a question mark there, it's going to say that we have to do something called unwrapping this, which means we have to wrap this whole thing inside of an if statement, which becomes kind of a headache for us right now. So for right now, since we're not talking about that kind of logic yet, just put an exclamation point there, and we're saying, trust me, I know what I'm doing. All right, so now when we click to go to that second screen, the prepare for segue is going to get called just like it got called before. We'll grab our destination view controller, and we're going to set the text variable on that second screen equal to whatever text is currently in our text field. So go ahead and run this. And now you should be able to type whatever you want in that text field. Then click Go to Page 2, and you should see the text come across.
Yep. Good.
All right. So that is our way of getting information from page 1 to page 2 using segues. Okay. Now, well, that's a way of getting information from a text field on page 1 to a label on page 2 using segues. Now, let's say we didn't want to use segues, and instead we wanted this button to programmatically do something else. All right, so what we're going to do here, we're going to go back out to our storyboard, and I'm actually going to do this, we're going to do this with a second button, just so we see the comparison. So go back out to our storyboard and click on our pink controller, the first screen. And then over here on the right, go and find the button. So if you have it in a grid, it looks like that. If you have it in a list, it looks like this. So find the button in here and just drag it out onto the screen. And then double click on the button. Let's give this guy a name. And we're going to call this guy Go to Page 2. I'm going to put Storyboard on there, just to kind of give us a heads up of the difference between these two buttons. That'll make sense to you here in a second. What time are we done? 55 or on the hour?
3 o'clock. Right?
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have another button on here. Right now that button's not connected to anything, and we want to keep it that way. We're not going to do the control click thing. We're gonna connect this button up a different way. All right, we're not going to use a segue like we did for the first button. We're going to use storyboards for this. So in order to do this, what I first need to do is I need to go over to our second screen, the page 2. And I need to provide a mechanism for using the storyboard to create an instance of this guy. And that'll make sense here in a second. So just follow along with this. So we're going to click on this guy, make sure he's selected. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the Identity Inspector again. This is the same place we went to that allowed us to see what class this guy was associated with. And you notice below this, we have something called a Storyboard ID. Now you can put whatever you want in here, but I almost always put the same thing as the class name. So I'm going to highlight the class name and copy it, or you can just type it again in here. So we're going to call this Page 2 VC is going to go in there, and then just press enter so it highlights. So what we've done here is we've now let that second screen know that the storyboard can refer to him from in code. And you'll see what I mean by that here in a minute. Okay, so that's all we need to do in terms of page 2. We just needed to provide a mechanism to uniquely identify him in code. So we'll go back over here to the first screen now. And now we want to look at our other interface builder connection. So we've done IB outlets with this label and with this text field. Now we want to create an IB action associated with this button. All right, so we're going to click on this view controller. Then click on the 2 circles. We're going to click once on this second button, hold down the control key, and we're going to drag from that second button into our code. I'm just going to go after view did load, after the closing curly brace of view did load right here, but before did receive memory warning. So it's just somewhere inside the code here, but not inside of another function. And we're going to let go. And as a reminder, notice the default up here is an outlet. We don't want an outlet in this case. We're not trying to give ourselves access to the button. we're trying to create a function that we want to get called when that button is clicked. So we're going to click on that drop down where it says outlet, and we're going to change it to action. All right. And now we're going to name this function. So we're going to call it page 2 button pressed. You can call it whatever you want, but page 2 button pressed makes reasonable enough sense. All right, and then the rest of the stuff is fine as is. Go ahead and hit connect, and this puts a function into your code of type IB action. And we're going to go and implement that function. So you can close that window. Now go back over here to viewcontroller.swift. And notice in your code here we have our page 2 button pressed, and we want to go in between the opening and closing curly braces. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to create the second screen, the screen we want to go to programmatically using the storyboard. So we're going to say let VC equal self.storyboard.instantiate view controller with identifier. So first of all, it's a mouthful, right? So watch what I do here when I'm typing this. So I'm going to start off by saying self, and then I put a dot. Now I know I want the storyboard, so if I just start typing in the storyboard, I see, I type ST, it brings up storyboard. Hit tab, that'll complete the word storyboard. Then I put another dot, and it gives me my possible options. I know I want to do instantiate something, so I'm going to start with INS, and it shows me my two options: instantiate initial view controller or instantiate a view controller given an identifier. I want that one, the second one. So make sure you can use the arrow keys to highlight the one you want, and then press enter on the right one. Okay, and notice that it highlights the code for us here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the identifier, and that's going to be the name of that storyboard ID we put out there. And that's that guy, page 2 VC. Okay, inside of double quotes. Now, when we instantiate him, he's going to be in this storyboard. This function creates a generic UI view controller instance. We happen to know that this guy is a little bit more than a generic view controller. He's actually going to be a page 2 VC. So we're going to tell Swift that this guy is actually a page 2 VC. So we're saying, trust me, he's not a normal view controller. He's a page 2 VC.
What's that statement, Brian?
As
exclamation point. So this says, give me this UI view controller as a page 2 view controller, a specialty view controller. I'm saying, trust me, the guy with this ID will actually be one of these guys, not a generic view controller. Trust me. Okay? So this gives me access to that guy. This accomplishes in a different way the same thing we accomplished down here and prepared for segue with our destination view controller. After that line of code, we have that view controller. Now we want to go ahead and set our text equal to whatever's in our text field. So we'll say vc.theText is equal to self.thetextfield.text. So the exact same line we had down here in the bottom. All right, so now we have one more thing to do. One more thing that will not get done automatically for us because we didn't do this with the segue. We need to tell the current view controller to actually present the new view controller. So we'll say self dot, then start typing in present. And we want this third one, or the fourth one down, this present view controller. The name of the view controller we're going to present is VC. Do we want it animated? Yes, we do, because we're going to see it. We'll talk about this more next time because we're a little short on time here. And then where it says completion, just put in the word nil. We're not going to do anything special. I'll explain that next time. Okay, and that's it. That's all we have to do. So both of these buttons should ultimately accomplish the same thing, But the second one uses the storyboard to create an instance of the view controller.
It's 2
then
o'clock.
sets the text, then presents it. So if we run this real quick, we'll see that both buttons ultimately do the same thing now. Should be popping up here in a second. So I'll go ahead and just put an 89 there, click on the second one, and there's our 89. So same result, but different means of getting that result. All right, so I'll go ahead and I'll push this up to GitHub so you guys have access to it if you want to pull it down again and later on to look at it in case you were falling a little behind here. I'll also put the video up. Anything else, or is that how we cooked?
No, that's good. Yeah, these guys are good. I mean, the day's over, so.
Okay.
I'll catch up with you later, Mike.
All right, sounds good. I'll get the video uploaded.
All right, thanks, bud.
Yep, bye-bye.
Yeah.